Lately, YouTube hype has been about hashtag Team Trees. I'm sure you're aware of the project by Mr.Beast to plant 20 million trees. Other YouTubers have been making videos on the topic.
Mr.Beast and the rest of us are working with the Arbor Day Foundation, who are the world's largest tree planting NGO, and they've been operating for almost 50 years.
I thought I should add my own cynical and contrarian perspectives. Now, it's great that YouTube celebrities are using their fame and resources to do good, rather than just create drama, sell tickets and merch, or just go for an ego trip. Although I think there is probably a lot of ego padding behind the scenes on Team Trees. I guess trying to help the environment is great too, but that's kind of where my criticisms begin. Global warming is said to be caused by the additional carbon dioxide released through human use of fossil fuels. As all children are taught, trees breathe carbon dioxide and they make oxygen. Therefore, trees are good. Save the trees, right? Not quite. It's only part of the solution, and the reason for that is the carbon cycle. All plants and animals, as carbon-based life, are part of the carbon cycle. When we die and decompose, a large portion of our carbon stores are converted to carbon dioxide. So much so that in Canada, you'll be charged carbon taxes for your cremation. And so too with the forests. When the trees burn, or they rot, or they're eaten by pests, they return to the carbon cycle. Now we can view trees as giant carbon batteries. However, these batteries have a limited lifetime, and you've got to tap into them before all their good work's undone in those fires by rotting, by being eaten. Now, there's actually a lot of factors in our favor. NASA data indicates that global plant life is growing 30% faster because of additional man-made CO2. And this effect is highest around China and India, which is where most of the pollution occurs. And as any marijuana grower can tell you, this effect scales much further than our own environment could ever possibly reach. We could have CO2 levels 10 times higher than they are now, and in return, we'd see massive increases in plant growth. And therefore, the more CO2, the more plant life. This additional plant life absorbs more than half of man-made CO2. Some figures I've seen cite 2/3. I believe that was a NASA figure. However, this process also works in reverse. If we're trying to lower global carbon dioxide levels, we will have to fight the ecosystem of the entire planet. As we complete that task and as we lower those levels, it will proportionally decrease global plant life. A reduction in plant life means a reduction in food, and as a result, many animals would starve and we would see mass die-offs, perhaps even species endangerment or even extinctions. And they'll probably chalk those extinctions up to global warming as they congratulate themselves for stopping it just in time. This is one of the main criticisms I have of MrBeast's project. Because higher CO2 levels mean faster plant growth, this means that adding more plants is less effective than it would appear on face value, because whatever CO2 is absorbed by MrBeast's trees, most of that would have gone to other plants in the area, making them grow faster because they had access to CO2. As I said before, trying to reduce CO2 levels means fighting the entire ecosystem. And this leads to a second and connected point. In an earlier video I did on this topic, I looked deep into the conditions of the forests of British Columbia, where the mountain pine beetle has caused so much destruction that not only do our forests make more CO2 than they absorb, but they cause multiple times the amount of man-made CO2. The forests of Canada make more CO2 than Canadians. Why? Environmentalism, the belief that trees are good, save the trees. And this ideology is something I feel that mr.beast project inadvertently perpetuates. Here in British Columbia, the reaction to the mountain pine beetle was to reduce logging. This caused them to spread and kill entire mountainsides of forest, leaving it dried and dead, and then the fires came. The scope of the damage? 16 million hectares of forest destroyed. There are 1,000 to 2,000 trees per hectare. That's some 16 billion trees in one Canadian province. This completely dwarfs mr.beast's 20 million tree project. But people don't understand proportions. You scroll down the comment section on this video, and they think they will save the world.
It's day number 2 and we brought a lot more people. And now we're gonna try to plant the 20 million trees.
How many trees have you planted so far today?
I have dug 473 holes.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. 473 holes.
Really?
Yes.
And they think they will save the world. And in fact, hundreds, maybe thousands of people have driven long distances to come and plant trees, which may never even pay off the carbon invested in planting them. There are much more proximal, much more effective solutions we could try. Rather than planting a sapling on prime agricultural land, we could pick up a dead stick from a forest bed. That's an immediate removal of carbon. It's that simple. Trees are good. They breathe CO2. But they have to be harvested before they return to the carbon cycle. There is, more or less, a set amount of carbon in the system of plant life and, well, life in general. Humans add to that carbon content through fossil fuels. We can take it out as well. But we actually have to physically take it out of the system, out of the carbon cycle, and store it. This solution has many benefits. First, the problem of carbon dioxide is largely overstated, and I have clear proof of that I'll show you right now. How is the problem measured? By the ton. What is CO2? 1 part carbon and 2 parts oxygen. Carbon is only slightly heavier than oxygen, meaning that carbon dioxide is thus 73% oxygen by weight. Roughly 3/4 oxygen by weight. That is to say that the real problem, carbon, is only 1/4 of the issue we hear repeated so often. So by harvesting carbon from plant life, we can begin to rapidly solve the problem, assuming it is a problem, using natural and renewable resources. And fortunately, carbon is an incredibly useful material which has practically unlimited industrial applications. Moreover, trees in the form of lumber are useful as well. This solution offers jobs, manufacturing, cheaper housing and construction costs, and rather than a punitive solution of carbon taxes to atone for decades of government resource mismanagement, we could have jobs, we could have those cheaper materials. And this increased growth rate caused by additional CO2 levels will keep increasing. We could speed that up even more by fertilizing the forests with elements such as nitrogen. All it takes is a little gardening. This is an industrial-sized problem, which requires an industrialized, even militarized solution.
473 holes.
Really?
Yes.
Instead, I feel as if the same breed of fanatic who flocks to this emotionally gratifying display are of the same breed of those who would stand in the way of the only practical solution.
Yes.
Save the trees, right? For some reason, we're offered many expensive, complex, globe-spanning, high-tech, government-based initiatives. Nobody seems to acknowledge that we can reduce CO2 levels by walking to the nearest forest, collecting the dead wood, and turning it to charcoal.
As I mentioned earlier, this is an inefficient process, mostly due to the small scale. In fact, I've kind of measured out these 2 piles of wood. This pile is going to get burned in order to charcoal this pile. So I'm completely losing 50% of the wood that I put into the system. But all of this wood is carbon neutral, plus or minus a decade or so. So any amount that I do convert into charcoal is a net negative. I think that's just absolutely brilliant. And it doesn't have to be wood like this. It could be sunflowers, for instance. In fact, that might be what I do next. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.